Hi, my name is Dan, and I'm submitting this pitch as part of the Series Fest Pitchathon. My story is called Climate Time, and it focuses in the pilot episode on Tom, who is a divorced college professor who is a climate expert. And among other things, he has a syndicated radio show where listeners call in and ask him questions about climate change. It's a live video streamed radio show, and it sometimes is called the Climate Talk version of Car Talk. So Tom, in answering his callers' questions, always leaves them with optimism and hope in terms of our climate future. But he himself has grown increasingly despondent about climate change and the future that the changing climate will provide us with. So he decides to take advantage of his show to take a rather drastic action, which he thinks will make a difference in terms of getting people's awareness on climate change. So one day on his show, he occasionally has guests. He has in the daughter of the CEO of the largest oil and gas company in the US. She is fresh out of college, yet she's a senior vice president. The line on her is that she really doesn't know anything, and she merely parrots or echoes what her dad says, which includes climate denialism and all sorts of other misstatements about climate and the oil and gas industry. So Tom agrees to have her in, and during their discussion, it gets kind of silly almost. Tom is trying to provide her with facts and figures and science on climate change. She comes back with what she calls alternative facts and other misstatements and incorrect facts about climate change. So at one point in the conversation, Tom decides that he has had enough. And he says to Sarah that he wants her to have her father come in right then and there with a live video feed to talk to him about climate change. Sarah says, there's no way that he will do that. There's no way that I will do that. And Tom reaches into his desk drawer and pulls out a revolver. And he says to Sarah, if he doesn't do that, neither you nor I will leave this studio alive. So Sarah is obviously speechless, distraught, fearful, but she's quiet. And Tom begins to talk to her about climate change. And he begins to provide her with all sorts of information. Now, at first, Sarah is obviously not receptive to all of this, but she realizes that she's in a predicament and perhaps she should listen. And the more she listens, she begins to ask questions and nod in agreement to what Tom has said. And then all of a sudden, her dad calls in via live video feed. And at first he condemns Tom for, quote, kidnapping Sarah and offering to have this kind of exchange. And Tom says, well, you know, I want to talk to you. I want you to answer some of my questions. And he says, I'm not going to answer my questions. You need to let my daughter go. Meanwhile, Sarah, with a quizzical look on her face, is able to, while Tom's not looking, grab the gun out of his hands. And Sarah's dad, Jake, immediately says, shoot him, Sarah, shoot him. And Sarah points the gun at Tom, but then pivots and points it at the video screen with the image of her father and shoots, shattering that image. Sarah hands the gun back to Tom and says, what do we do now? Tom shuts off the video feed and the audio feed and says, "Trust me and follow me." So holding a gun to Sarah's head, because of course the police have gathered just outside the recording studio that they are in, go upstairs to the roof. And awaiting them on the roof is what can only be called a Black Ops helicopter with a Black Ops crew. And they climb aboard the helicopter, and Sarah says, "Who are these people?" And Tom says, "They're some new friends." And Sarah says, "You weren't really going to shoot me, were you?" And Tom says with a smirk, "I don't think so." And off they fly to the home base camp of the renowned eco-terrorist group called the Saviors. The rest of the series focuses on Tom and Sarah joining the Saviors and having to interact with the motley crew, some of them strange and dangerous, that have joined together to follow a disgruntled scientist yet charismatic leader who organized and founded the Saviors. Over the course of season 1, there will be a number of drama points. There'll be a romantic involvement between Tom and Sarah, and there will be all sorts of inter-character tension and development, and the season 1 will conclude with a very significant act of eco-sabotage. Thanks for listening.